Good afternoon. I am Mel Talbert. I am the founder and director of the Orchids Women's Empowerment Ministry. I am also a Christian coach where I help God centered women of color break free from strongholds of trauma to discover their power and fulfill their divine identity and purpose. So, this afternoon, I'd like to talk about a topic that has been weighing on me very heavily today. In fact, I woke up this morning and there was this very eerie spirit that almost like brought me to shaking inside that I could not talk about. I actually had to call someone and just open up to them. I said, why is this a feeling that I'm feeling? It's not something I've dealt with for, at least a couple of years. So why would God place something so specific in my spirit? And so I'm being obedient. And I said that I would commit to sharing this. And so I'm making this video just to reach out to someone because I know there is someone that needs to hear this. So that topic is church hurt. It is time that we broke the silence and talked about church hurt. It affects both men and women, but in this video, I want to talk about how it affects women. So for those of you who don't know what church hurt is this painstaking, grueling, penetrating feeling that you get when you've been wronged in the church, and it could be manipulation, it could be betrayal, from your church's leadership. It could be molestation. It could be assault. It could be gaslighting, and those things can be physical, mental, emotional, and sexual. And they have most times long-term effects on the people that experience them. And so I want to talk about, what that looks like for some people. I also want to share an instance that I had, and I want to talk about some of those long-term effects. So for me, I was a member of a church a couple of years ago, and a guy started, making passes. And it wasn't like something like, oh, I'd be okay with or it was comfortable. It was uncomfortable and I wasn't interested. And for me, like, no is no. And so I wanted to handle it at my level. So I just, reached out because we were in the church. We were both on youth ministry. We were kind of cool. So I just reached out and said, I'm not interested. Let them know. Thought we could still be cool, but it persisted. And he started showing up places where I was at the same time, and it just became so coincidental. And I'm like, this is not going to work. So I contemplated, should I go to the local enforcement or should I go to the leader of our church? And I didn't want to go to enforcement, so I went to our church leadership. And long story short, they didn't really do much about it. I left. And it was really a hard decision for me to leave because I was committed to, the youth ministry and other ministries in the church. So I really tried to just see if I could hang on and distance myself from those ministries, but I just couldn't do it. And I talked to a lot of people and they said, I think it's time for you. You probably you should go. And so the fortunate thing for me was that I was at that time already mature enough in my relationship with God, to keep that going and to keep growing in him, but also to understand the importance of a covering, to be in a church, to be a part of a corporate body of faith. And so in time, I was able to, find and pray on it first and find another church that felt, good and wholesome and traditional for me to go to. But this was the first time I ever left a church other than when I moved from a different state. And obviously I couldn't physically be there. But there were other things too that was going on in that church in terms of order, in terms of a lot of mess. And I'm the kind of person that always stays above that. So for it to impact me directly was like, this is not going to work. And one thing I know, that every organization is a reflection of its leader. So whether it be a church, a business, a job, whatever, you can be who you want to be outside of it. But when you start bringing those things in, it's a reflection of what that leader allows. So always be careful of that when you join any body of faith, that it not only has godly principles, but that it also operates in godly principles. So I want to jump back to, now that I've shared that, hey, if someone feels offended, maybe you're part of the problem, but I needed to share that. So next, I'd just like to talk about how it can affect people if you were if you were a recipient of some form of church hurt. So a lot of times it turns people away from that church. But the unfortunate thing is sometimes people also turn away from God. They don't want a relationship with God when you just like shot religion all over them instead of compassion and love and relationship. They don't want to be a part of a body of believers when they themselves grew up and they were molested or assaulted in that church. So those are some of the long-term effects. And God didn't call us to be perfect, but he also does not want us to turn people who are seeking light, who are seeking fulfillment and wholeness away from the body of Christ, away from the kingdom. And so as leaders, specifically as Christian believers and Christian leaders and believers of God, we have to be careful of the role that we play and how we show up, especially in the church. We're not going to be perfect, but when you're doing things like that, like I said, that turn people away from God, not good. It's never okay. And so some of the other long-term effects are relationship issues and self-esteem issues. If you grew up and you didn't have a father figure, so you look to your pastor and the leaders of your church and they wronged you in some way. So let's say it was, assault or molestation. You're going to end up a lot of times in toxic relationships or unhealthy relationships and friendships and not knowing what to look for or what to expect because the person you look to did you like this. And so it's so important that, like I said, we're careful because that has a lasting impact. And even for me, lasting impact for a while until I went to God and chose to really, place total trust in him and forgive so that I could be relinquished. It can also have self-esteem issues if you were manipulated by people in the church, if you were gaslighted, if it was some type of social, mental, or emotional impact. Those things can have long-term effects on your self-esteem because when we look at the church, we place those leaders in high esteem. And so if they're the ones that wrong us, it's like, okay, something must really be wrong with me. And so I just want to shed light on those few things. Don't want to take too much of your time, but I felt it so important and so pressing to share this video because it was on my spirit and it brought me to tears to think about the fact that there are people who weren't strong enough in their relationship with God, who weren't courageous enough to say, I'm going to continue to pursue God. I'm going to continue to maybe look for other places that I can feel are more God-centered, that are a little healthier, so that I can still be a part of a corporate body of believers. So I just want you to know that I pray that whoever you are, if you're listening to this video, that you are healed from the trauma that you face, that you are made whole, that you are surrounded by, in your journey to healing, spirit-filled, God-centered people who love God and who operate according to his principles. Thank you.